The Senate has approved the request of President Muhammadu Buhari to restructure the 22.7 trillion naira loans the Central Bank of Nigeria extended to the federal government under its Ways and Means provision. The upper legislative chamber approved the request on Wednesday after Ibrahim Gobre, Senate leader, presented a report. President Muhammadu Buhari had asked the Senate to approve the sum in December 2022, but some senators, mostly of the opposition, kicked against it. They demanded that records of what the funds were spent on be provided before approval is given to his request. Well, let's unpack this further with Sopitan, principal partner at Woodridge and Scott Consulting. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, against earlier advice, the Senate has approved the request of President Buhari to restructure the 22.7 trillion naira loans the Central Bank of Nigeria extended to the federal government under its Ways and Means provision. Now, are there economic implications to this move?
Well, thanks for having me again, and good evening, Nigerians. There are economic implications, but I don't think it's what a lot of people are thinking or saying. It would appear as though there's quite a lot of misunderstanding as to what has just happened. So the approval from the Senate is not an approval for a new loan. You hear a lot of the narrative and the criticisms, and people are talking as if the the Senate has approved, for the government to go borrow an extra 22.7 trillion. No, the 22.7 trillion has been borrowed already. It's a fait accompli. The CBN has provided these funds to the federal government over the course of several years, breaking all legal provisions, all rules and laws governing such transactions, especially the CBN Act 2007, which provides that the federal government can only resort as a last resort to the CBN to fund its budget deficits through the Ways and Means, but only for 5% of its total annual revenue for the previous year. Knowing fully well, for example, that the last year's revenue was about 6 trillion, it means that the CBN should not have been able to give more than 300 billion naira to the federal government. So you have to ask the question, how did the funds in the Ways and Means account accumulate to 22.7 trillion, which means the government has been flouting the law terribly. But this move by the Senate, what it will do is to legalize, this very illegal transactions, clean up the books, get the Central Bank of Nigeria to be able to issue security. So this is like securitization of the debt, basically. They will issue bonds and some bills to allow for a longer period of repayment and allow the public, the investing public, to actually benefit from this. So I think contrary to what a lot of people are thinking, this might very well be a good move, because what this has done is it's taken, money that is sitting idle in the CBN's books, and it's made it available to the investing public as a way of deepening, for example, the money market and the securities market. So I'm not so sure that this is a bad thing. I think it's actually a move in the right direction and would help the incoming administration at least stay within the ambit of the law with how they're going to fund and finance government activities, into their own tenure.
Well, just as you've said, do you not think this will set a precedent now for other administrations, especially when you put into consideration the huge loans Nigeria has to pay? Recall that we also have the $800 million, we borrowed from the World Bank, and so many of this loans. What impact do you think this will have on the economy? Do you think we can recover? The federal government has, over time, defended itself, saying that these loans are necessary. Looking back now, do you think they've been able to make good use of these loans with regards to recovery of the economy and every other thing around that?
Okay, so there are two things that you just asked now. I'll address the first, which is the issue of precedence. What has happened, the reality, I think people need to understand what has just happened. What has happened is that our governments have repeatedly, routinely flouted the laws of the land. In some other parts of the world, this is an impeachable offense, committed by the president. They have broken the law, very clearly speaking. And it is not just this president. For the Ways and Means accounts to be 22.7 trillion, What this means, just going by the calculations that I've just done, is that this amount has been accumulated over a long period of time, which probably, my guess is that this has gone beyond even this administration. This is a practice that has been in place long before this administration came on board. So in terms of precedence, yes, there is a terrible precedence that could be set in that incoming governments or subsequent governments, thinking of government as a continuum, governments will then say to themselves, look, there's no big deal. We can take this money, we can break the law, and at some point down the line, we'll get an approval from the Senate and regularize and securitize this loan. So that is a bad thing, but I think that it is better for us to correct the wrongs of the past and then try to start on a clean slate, which is what this approval will do. Now, going to the other part of your question, which is what the funds have been utilized for, and whether they've been judiciously used, whether all these funds, these loans will result in development of our economy. The answer is in the wind, Shade. We know that this government has spent quite a lot of money on infrastructure projects, but the exact quantum of money, the volume of money that has been used for which particular project, the repayment sources for the loans that we're talking about, and all of those other details are completely unknown to Nigerians. And even if you send, a freedom of information request to the Ministry of Finance, as some people have done in the past, you will probably find that you will not get the answers you need. So I think that as Nigerians, we need to pay a bit more attention to these things and maybe find a way to hold our governments accountable so that we don't have loans piling up on generations yet unborn, whilst we are not quite seeing what those monies are used for.
Well, indeed, Segun Sopitan, I wish we can extend this conversation, but we need to wrap it up at this point. But Segun Sopitan, Principal Partner at Woodridge and Scott Consulting, thank you very much for your insight.